Hello, and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Last time we booted this up, we took down Taz. Today, our aim is to take down the bounty side of our next Blacklist racer, Vic. Now, Vic sports himself a Toyota Supra, which is a marginally better vehicle than what we are aiming for right now. Result of that is there's going to be a little bit of growing pains in the near future here as we try to best this new opponent. But we're not too worried about that. For now, it's all about the pursuits, all about building up a little bit of bounty and tackling the milestones while we're at it. So, today's milestone challenges for this area are to rack up a bounty of over $5,000, hit a minimum of 4 police vehicles, and get away within a span of 4 minutes. Now, I think that's going to be relatively easy, especially given that the 4-minute timer is already in cooldown, which is a little bit disappointing, but be that as it may. With one of our milestones down, 2 to go, this one I'm actually planning on dragging out a little bit just because, well, why wouldn't I? Finish the task quickly, but ineffectively, or do it right the first time. So, yeah. One thing I've always enjoyed about the Rockport City is the various areas that we end up in all kind of mesh well together. They built a full living-ish city. I say living-ish because there are numerous issues with how the city is set up. But they made a semi-functional city first and racecourses second. Whereas earlier games focused in on either the race courses or the world itself. Or focus more so on the race courses than the world itself. Which I gotta give kudos to. Now, because this video is more so just going to be a little bit of fun messing with the cops for a bit, I'm not necessarily going to treat this as the most spectacular video I put on the tube of views. But be that as it may, the LEXUS LS 300 or 350 is going to treat us well in this regard. I just wish that I could deal with this slightly faster. There we go. 2 milestones down. So now it's all about just racking up a bounty. Honestly, racking up bounty in this doesn't take much. You earn more bounty by every, I think it's like 10 to 15 seconds that you're in the chase. And the more police you have involved, the higher your bounty crawls. But it's more than just racking up quick little one-offs. It's also about making sure that your chase extends long enough that you can have multiple vehicles on you, so to speak. Generally, I find that the higher your heat level is, the faster you rack it up. In heat level 1, you're lucky to get a 10,000 bounty. And truth be told, I don't even know if it's possible to rack up 10,000 bounty at heat level 1. But by heat 5, you're going to be racking up a million bounty, 1.5 mil just on coincidence. So it's going to be something that gets a little bit out of control very quickly. Luckily, it seems as though this isn't going to be too bad. Another minute and a half-ish, and we can tackle another section of the races. Oh, yay! They had another vehicle waiting. I'll count my blessings where they lie, because that could have gone very poorly. I was also messing around on the direct sequel earlier today, and after years of attempts, finally also beat all of the challenge series in that one. I'll admit that Carbon's challenge series is actually quite a bit easier than Most Wanted's, simply because Need for Speed Carbon has half of the availability, or less than half of the number of challenges, and it spreads it out between stuff like chases, races, etc. The biggest challenge with it is just adapting to your vehicle for each race, which I think is a fairly reasonable thing to have as a statement. Adaptation is key when it comes to the higher end challenges like that. But I find it funny because the final challenge, the one that was giving me the most grief, wasn't because it was actually challenging. I never failed it in my various attempts. It's just that the disc was so damaged that every time I got close to finishing, it would kick me out and say the disc could no longer be read, which is rather disappointing. Okay, come on. Let's finish this up. 200 bounty. Let's go. Oh, perfect. And with that, it is time for a trip to the golf course. Now, having two separate vehicles really isn't an asset at this point in time. Generally, heat level 1 and 2 are fairly reasonable to get through. Once you hit heat level 3, things start getting a little bit more challenging. Heat 4, it tends to, you'll either do great or you won't. Heat level 5, if you're already there, you have a vehicle capable of handling it, which is kind of my general mentality as it is. But enough about that. It's time to hit the highway because we're heading for some toll booth time trials. Now, I have mentioned, I think, that toll booth time trials are probably my favorite mode in this game, simply because sprint races have always been my favorite. This just clears the air and makes it so that it's not about a race of beating your opponent or anything like that. It's about trying to best yourself and mastering your vehicle. In that regard, toll booth time trials are one of the best modes out there. My biggest gripe with toll booth time trials is that they end up being relatively long races with relatively little payoff as far as outcome is, which is a little bit on the disappointing side. Be that as it may, they're not long races, they're not hard races by any means. It's just simple point-to-point vehicle mastery and enjoying the scenery, so to speak. And if I'm being completely honest, I think that's probably my favorite part about these races is that they're a much more relaxed version of a standard race because of it being a more, shall I call it, a scenic style race. Anywho, with that, we're heading into the second toll booth time trial. But as I kind of alluded to, they're not difficult races. They're just long ones. The thing about this comparatively to other games of a similar nature is that Need for Speed Most Wanted allowed the player to grind cash by racing these toll booth time trials, which is something that was lost in later games. Need for Speed Carbon, notably, only has a base rate of finance at $500 or something per race. So after you've beaten a race, your earnings on that race again are effectively nil, especially when you're dealing with vehicles that are several $100,000 a piece. But it also makes sense because Need for Speed Carbon, its entire premise was that your initial decision changed up how you would gain upgrades throughout the game. So if you had the capability of earning a incredible amount of upgrades right off the bat, or the cash to buy them outright almost instantly, then you ended up with an issue of where was the challenge. With this, because your upgrades are tied directly to how high up the blacklist you are, it doesn't feel as cheap to have multiple $1,000 just sitting in the bank from playing these kind of races, because ultimately it doesn't have much of a use outside of buying new cars and upgrading them, which are again dictated by how many blacklist racers you've defeated. You're not going to be able to buy the top 3-5 vehicles in the game until you've beaten most of the game. Anywho, I am curious because I'm getting close to the end of one of my series here. If there was a game in question that the viewers had in mind as a replacement to that game. Because, I'll be honest, I want diversity in my channel. And I think that was something that I've been very adamant about and have shown throughout is that there's no one game that I'm intending on focusing on. This channel is going to be wide and diverse and have numerous games show up with numerous backgrounds to be conversed about and have some level of deeper thought or communication on. But I'm curious if there's something out there that the viewers want in particular, because having one of my side series, or one of my mini series, being on Devil May Cry, I'll be honest, I had never played Devil May Cry beyond chapter 1 or 2 up until starting the challenge, and I've been enjoying it so far. So if there is a game that the viewers are curious about or want to see more about, I'm all ears. My only issue is that if I do not own the game already, that I won't be buying any games until this channel starts to financially take off. I have no problem buying a game if it's being paid for through the channel. If it is not financially feasible for me, I'm not going to jump up and down and make make buying new games a priority. With that in mind, we are now tackling the tool booth time trials because looking at the time, I've got lots of it. And I'm thinking we'll do the last sprint race, probably on this video. And once that's done, we'll jump off and we will handle the latter half, the lap knockouts, and challenging Vic himself for another night. But all in all, if there is a thought, a game, a curiosity, an interest that the viewers out there have, I'd love to hear it. I'd love for you to leave a comment on what you'd like to see. Anywho, I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with speed trap races. Speed trap races are ironically easier and harder than a standard sprint race, or um, yeah, a standard sprint race, in that a standard sprint race just has you get from point A to point B, first one across the line wins. These are more difficult in that it's more so about timing. It's about knowing your vehicle's limitations a bit better and being able to reach a higher top speed through each checkpoint than your opponents, which often is harder than it might seem. I say, having finally beaten it and gotten prepared for it. And with this, it will be the final race of the video, we think. Nothing too fancy, aside from all these newfangled vehicles they keep throwing at me. Looks like a bunch of Audis and I think a Subaru in there. It's not a half-bad cast of cars for a race. I'm also thinking of removing the roof scoop on this car. I hate roof scoops. I do not like them, never have. Not even when I was younger and more pliable. Alrighty. Second place, making half decent time. One of the things about about Rubber Band AI, which is a lot of what Need for Speed's AI runs off of, is that the AI actually is dependent a little bit on your vehicle. It's dependent on how many upgrades your vehicle has, as well as how well you have been doing recently. The game will never actually make it so that a race is impossible forever. Rather, it's going to make a race difficult in numerous places. And if you finagle with your car enough, if you test what you're capable of or try out different things, you're going to find that the AI actually will get better or worse depending on how you've built your car. An example of this is actually Need for Speed Underground. Probably has the worst case of this, where the AI will actually change dramatically from being perfect, unstoppable monsters to being rather underwhelming and almost impossible to lose to. Anywho, we're here. We finished every sprint-based race in Vic's Blacklist number 13. So if you like what you see or are interested in seeing the next round, drop a like, leave a subscribe, and catch us next time. Until then, I hope you have a good one. I think I'm going to swap the car right away here. I think that sounds like a good idea.